Welcome to Matters Financial and Geopolitical from a Frontier. And my goodness, there's a lot going on. Let's just start with Tesla first. It plunged, wiping out the tweet-fueled rally that it embarked on over 48 hours. No evidence of financing has emerged for an $82 billion buyout. The SEC was said to be looking at the car maker before Musk's posts, and that took me back to Jerry Maguire. Show me the money. Have a listen if you got a moment. Tesla 420 call options that expired today went from $1.14 a pop on Tuesday afternoon to 3 US cents now. Bloomberg asks, where's the money coming from, Elon Musk? Unusual chain of events made it seem as if Musk had essentially done all of this on his own, an idea that wasn't entirely contradicted by a 57-word statement released the following day by 6 of the company's 9 directors, which contended that discussions on the possible buyout had started only a week earlier. The statement was so carefully worded that it was unclear whether there had been an in-depth discussion or if Musk had simply mentioned it a few times before being moved to tweet. To buy Tesla at the proposed valuation, Musk, who owns about 20% of the shares, would need to come up with $66 billion, a daunting sum even for someone with the auto chief's capacity for virtuosic self-promotion. The company already has $10 billion in debt. No bank or investment fund so far has indicated it was aware of Musk's plans, saying that very few possible buyers, Masayoshi Son of SoftBank, Apple, Google, and SoftBank. I went back to Virilio. Speed now illuminates reality, whereas light once gave objects of the world their shape in reference to the speed of the ascent and decline of the share price. The new axis of evil, Iran, Turkey, China, Russia, are getting hit on all fronts. This is macro curd. And then I was saying, dear JP Morgan, and we're talking about Trump using the dollar as a weapon in order to sell it. And I was saying, look, JP Morgan, if the president wanted to weaponize the dollar, he should buy it and not sell it. The US dollar has literally become the atomic bomb that no one else has. Countries disobedient, unleash sanctions, economy implodes, Turkey, Russia, Iran, China. 14th of May, I touched on the risks when I said countries that have been flying by the seat of their pants are now being caught with their pants down. And the Turkish Lira is the one whose pants have been dramatically brought down. This is from Reuters, Jamie. Minus 10% today, minus 16% this week, minus 20% this month, minus 38% this year. I tweeted the Ottoman Redux dream crashes on the rocks of a currency crisis. Have a look at the forwards on the Lira. The Bisbla we're seeing in the spot market is pushing the 12-month outright price to 6.90 now. David Inglis. Turkey's Erdogan. Even if they got dollars, we got our people and our God. Well, it took me back again to Mrs. Thatcher, said you can never buck the markets, and in brackets I put Mr. Erdogan. And this is from JS Blockland. Guess which countries have been sanctioned by the US. So the Turkish lira is in free fall. It's like catching a falling knife, and clearly the forwards is talking about it sinking even further. Peter L. Brandt, who called it very early actually, also tweeted 24 hours ago about it completing a 3-day half-mast pennant with target of 5.8127, which we've already hit. Home thoughts. This is the sunset at Nyali Bridge from Ahmedin 1. And I lived on both sides of that bridge for most of my life, well, as I grew up. A gorgeous golden sunrise. This is from the Masai Mara from Angama Safari. Indeed it is. I tweeted this morning, such a delight driving to the office. Whoosh, and you hear at your desk, schools are closed for the summer and the roads are relatively free. One universe, 8 planets, 204 countries, 804 islands, 7 seas, 7 billion people. Don't let one person ruin your day. Stan Comp. Each year, more than 100 million, just think about that, 100 million sharks are killed worldwide, threatening the survival of most species. The slaughter's in part driven by the high price paid for shark fins. Literally, they cut it off and throw the shark back in the sea on the Asian market. Paul Virilio, there are no pessimists, there are only realists and liars, he says. Now, let's go back to that tweet that triggered the Crown Prince. This is it. Canada is gravely concerned about additional arrests of civil society and women's rights activists in Saudi Arabia, including Sama Badawi. We urge the Saudi authorities to immediately release them and all other peaceful human rights activists. Bloomberg Opinion asks, is Saudi Arabia starting to weaponize its wealth? Indeed, it always has done. Giving Western governments and business leaders pause for thought everywhere, and might explain in part why Canada's allies have been slow to offer backing to Freeland. They've been craven, and her Prime Minister Justin Trudeau. We've seen this style of economic warfare before. In the 1970s, Arab states wielded the oil weapon. But this latest attack comes after a dramatic increase in Riyadh's foreign investments. Thomas Friedman in the New York Times says toppling Qaddafi without building a new order may go down as the single dumbest action the NATO alliance ever took. It took the lid off Africa, leading to some 600,000 asylum seekers and illegal migrants flocking to Italy's shores in recent years. I said, this is an excellent point, and I'm glad Tom Friedman gets it now. I wish he had got it then. And then was 24th of October 2011, I wrote a piece, Gaddafi's Body in a Freezer. What's the message? China's Communist Party rulers in the last decade have clearly decided they would rather be feared than liked, Reuters. A backlash is being felt at the highest levels of government, possibly hitting a close aide to Xi, his ideology chief and strategist Wang Yuning. Wang was the architect of the China Dream, Xi's vision for China to become a strong and prosperous nation, has been taken to task by the Chinese leader for crafting an excessively nationalistic image for the country, which has only provoked the United States, the sources say. He's in trouble for mishandling the propaganda and hyping up China too much, said one of the sources, who has ties to China's leadership and propaganda system. And I was thinking back to an article I wrote at the end of August last year called China Rising. And that was the peak propaganda. And now, we've got the situation where Xi Jinping is in an existential chicky-run gig with Donald Trump, just when he chose to put himself on a pedestal, sort of hubris and Shakespeare at a geopolitical scale, as it were. 9th of July, I wrote about tariff wars, who blinks first, and I said Trump has now turned his attention to Xi Jinping and thrown in the keys, challenging him to a chicky run. And from a trading perspective, I think the fire starter, the chicky run specialist, is actually beginning to shake Xi. The crisis in Jeremy Corbyn's Labour Party is over Israel, not anti-Semitism. Valid point. Only in Eritrea, a young man jumped to a car where His Excellency President Isaias Afwerki and Dr. Abiy Ahmed were riding to shake their hands. Super yacht belonging to the Equatorial Guinea's ruler Teodoro Obiang via All About Africa. Space Force all the way, says Donald Trump. Right, let's move on. Russian ruble broke out of its range that it had been trading in since April. This too has come under the financial warfare strategy. The ruble under pressure from both the publication and Russian media of a proposed sanctions bill for alleged election meddling and actual sanctions set to hit August 22nd for the UK Novichok attack. This is the performance of various currencies versus the dollar by Spectator Index. Venezuelan Bolivar down 2 million %. Sudan down 170%. Argentina down 57%. Angola down 57%. Turkey down 54%, probably more now. Iran down 30%. Brazil 20%. Ethiopia 18%. Pakistan 16%. Tunisia 11%, Sweden down 10%, Russia down 10%, India down 7.2%, and the Kenya shilling is up 2.1%. Quite an extraordinary outcome. Debate that another time. Currency markets, euro, dollar bundled through 115.15 is now at 114.52. Dollar index testing, top of the range, feels like it wants to burst through it. Last I checked, 96.09. Japanese yen 110.82, Swiss franc 0.9966, the pound 127.76, heading back to 125. The Australian dollar, that's come off a lot, 0.7312. India rupee 68.915, just holding below a record low. South Korean won 11.2933, the Rial 380.08, Egyptian pound 17.859, and the Rand got blown out to 13.8874. Real dollar strength in our markets, king dollar at the moment. This is the dollar index, a 3-month chart. We're testing the top of the range, feels like it wants to break towards 100. Euro dollar, this is another chart, it's lost its grip on 115.15. It's a bit of a precipitous drop from here. How to lose $3 billion of Bitcoin. It's an extraordinary story. Accusations of tax evasion, police corruption, the kidnappers kidnapped a fugitive politician, and billions in Bitcoin lost. This is crypto trading Gujarat style. You've got to read it. It's hilarious. Well, not hilarious. Shocking. As the price of Bitcoin soared last year from less than $1,000 to more than $19,700, so did BitConnect's value. Banks and other investors in Gujarat poured Bitcoin worth $3.2 billion into BitConnect. Vast inflows from Indian investors were part of the result of Modi's shock move in November 2016 to invalidate banknotes worth 15 trillion rupees in an effort to curb tax evasion. You can't make it out. Complacency widespread in developed markets. This is the comparison between DM and EM volatility indices. Look at EM, it's like spiked bigly. Commodity returns. This is interesting from Charlie Bellello. Have a look to get a better flavor of what's been going on. Gold, we're now at 1207.75. It sort of showed some strength early on, but could wobble big time. The US forecasts a 50% cut in Iran oil sales, sources say. A range of likely cuts of 700,000 to 1 million barrels a day, significant reduction for the Islamic Republic, but short of the announced US goal of halting all sales of Iranian crude. Iran exported an average of 2.1 million barrels per day over the last year. Crude oil itself, we're right down at $66. Take a look at this chart. Coffee has been in a steady downtrend for months. Take a look at this chart. It's been in a long-term downtrend, actually. Emerging markets, Pakistan poised for a $4 billion loan from the Saudi-backed Islamic Development Bank. The paperwork is all in place. The IDB is waiting for the elected government to take charge before giving their approval. Person added that the loan would not cover Pakistan's expected financing gap of at least $25 billion during this financial year, but was an important contribution. Speaking to reporters in Islamabad this week, Mr. Umar, who has served as PTI's shadow finance minister while in opposition, warned that the situation is dire, We've got $10 billion of central bank reserves. We've got somewhere between 8 and 9 billion in short-term liabilities, and therefore your net reserves are close to nothing. Oh boy. Sub-Saharan Africa, I wrote about the Indian Ocean economy in a port race today from Massawa, Eritrea, admittedly on the Red Sea, to Djibouti, from Berbera to Mogadishu, from Lamu to Mombasa, to Tanga, to Bagamoyo, to Dar es Salaam, through Beira, Maputo, all the way to Durban. And all points in between, we're witnessing a port race of sorts as everyone seeks to get a piece of the Indian Ocean port action. China, the Belt and Road Initiative, the Gulf countries who now appear to see the Horn of Africa as their hinterland, Japan and India to a lesser degree, all jostling for optimal geo-economic positioning in the region. To wit, President Isaiah Afwerki received at State House a senior Saudi delegation led by the Foreign Minister Adel Al-Jubeir, and then His Excellency Prime Minister Abiy Ahmed also received the same Saudi Minister of Foreign Affairs, His Excellency Adel Al-Jubeir. And in my article I was saying, overlay the geopolitics, and it's worth noting that the geopolitics has become much more fluid in the Horn. Investments in ports have a long lead time, and I'm not certain that these same investments are able to recalibrate at the speed with which the geopolitics is moving. The big risk is that some of these port investments will be hand-and-toted. I was saying there'll be winners and losers, but currently everyone is drinking the Indian Ocean Kool-Aid. President Museveni is seen in Dar es Salaam on a one-day working visit ahead of trade talks with his counterpart, President Magufuli. Kabila names his Dauphin, says Africa Confidential. The president finally named a successor at the 11th hour and ended the third-term controversy. Storms still lie ahead. Saying the drama who will be allowed to run in the presidential elections during December has dragged the political system to the brink as growing armed conflict increased instability and fear. But on 8th August, President Joseph Kabila approved his former Interior Minister Emmanuel Ramazani Shadari as his chosen successor. The Secretary General of Kabila's People's Party for Reconstruction and Democracy, Shadari, may be intended to keep the presidential seat warm for Kabila, much in the same way that President Putin stepped down as president to avoid breaching the two-term limit before taking the job again after a period away. This is the surreal moment when Kabila's chosen successor, Shadari, along with a crowd of ministers, presidential advisors, and FCC members, nearly couldn't get into the Electoral Commission to register as a candidate. The lock was jammed and nearly got squished. Fears that Kabila will remain Congo's string puller, that's the Financial Times. Ultimately, Kabila ceded to national and international pressure. He could not resist the Congolese people and the international community any longer. But Mr. Kabila's choice of Emmanuel Ramazani Shadari to represent his ruling Common Front for Congo suggests he may have other ideas. A former Minister of the Interior, Shadari was sanctioned by the EU in 2017 for his role in repressing political protests. He's also considered to be one of Mr. Kabila's closest allies. So, pretty fluid. Let's keep an eye on it. I do think it's a Putin-Medvedev gig. Zimbabwe, the great observer gamble. Mnangagwa's team may have done enough to allow the most enthusiastic business people and governments to step up. Re-engagement. Much will depend on the strength of the opposition's case at the election tribunal and the credibility of its handling by the courts. Financial toes will be dipped in the water in search of what could be spectacular returns if the deals are cleverly structured. How these will help Zimbabweans with the public health and education systems in chaos and jobless rates close to 90% is another question. Zambia's yields on its Eurobonds rose above 12% yesterday, their highest in more than 2 years. That's from Paul Wallace. I spoke about this with Ronak Gopaldas when I said in an article he wrote for Business Day, I said, there's a big ticket blow-up risk in any African country. Zambia looks like a likely candidate, I said at that point. South Africa and all share down 2.89% this year. Dollar versus rand, oops. Have a look, we're back into Zuma finance minister resignation type territory here. Nigerian stocks dropped to more than a 9-month low on Thursday. The Nigerian stock market is down 5.26% year to date. Ghana Stock Exchange is up 11.2% year to date. Africa is experiencing a massive trend of increased use of skin bleaching, particularly in teenagers and young adults, said Lester Davids, a physiology professor. The older generation used creams, the new generation uses pills and injectables. The horror is that we do not know what these things do in high concentrations over time in the body. Oh boy. What may strike next, the World Health Organization fears, is something no doctor has ever heard of, let alone knows how to treat. It's come to be known as Disease X. And I was talking about Ebola, which is another disease X, and I was saying it's all about escape velocity. These sorts of things exhibit non-linear and exponential characteristics. Gem diamonds versus Petra diamonds this year. This is all about Magufuli. Tough economic conditions, outlooks, credit rating cuts for 5 African countries so far in 2018. Zambia, Kenya, Angola, Tunisia, and Gabon for its FX debt. All 5 cuts by Moody's. Top in business, petrol price to hit 130 shillings as VAT charge kicks in here in Kenya. Let's see how everyone responds to that. PS Thuge says there's no turning back on the promise the Treasury made to the IMF. I did an interview with Gatharo of the Elephant, and it was about the economy and debt and all that kind of thing. The link is there. I was saying faster growth is the silver bullet to attaining Kenya's Vision 2030. I appreciate the tweet from NE3Mo, who said, keep on doing what you're doing. This is regarding Portland, Africa's ranking of influencers here in Kenya, and I'm grateful to both. Former governor of Nairobi arrested on corruption charges. Former Nairobi City Governor Evans Kidero and another have this afternoon appeared before Milimani Anti-Corruption Court. This fellow is really bearing his fangs, Mr. Haji. Stanbic reported first half earnings per share surged 104.78%. Loans and advances net to customers expanded 15.367% to 154 billion. Total assets jumped 19% to 278.78 billion. Total income rallied to 21.907. Non-interest revenue surged 33.9988% to 5.56 billion shillings. Credit impairment, they were lapping a big impairment in the last year, 1.817 billion shillings. This time the impairment was 253 million, so that supported this rebound. Profit before tax up an eye-popping 135.26%. 5.194 billion. Profit after tax up 104.48%. Earnings per share up 104.78%. Dividend, first half dividend, they've hiked 80%. Cash and cash equivalents at the end of the period, 45.93 billion shillings. They were lagging a very big impairment in 2017 related to South Sudan, if I remember correctly. These are bulked up earnings which promise a lot, and I think it's a strong buy. Kenya shilling at 100.36, an ocean of stability in a very turbulent world. Nairobi all shares up 1.61% year to date. NSE 20s down 10.49% year to date. Thank you for stopping by.